Well, I mean, the first point I would make, and I'll just really make three to you, is that the Prime Minister said some things, especially I think very much at the outset of her remarks, that are really my first point, which is to say that in the context of what we're talking about, the prospects for European integration, I don't think necessarily membership, European integration and regional stability go hand in hand, in my view. It may be more about convergence than about membership, at least in the near term to the medium term, but these things are intimately connected. And I think they're connected not just from the point of view of regional interests here, although that's obviously true, but also I think for the European Union, going through an immense time of change. Obviously, I sit in Brussels as an American observer there, but an immense time of change. You know, for so many years, the European Union's foreign policy was enlargement. And if we don't have that on the table...
Pushed by us, the Brits, just as we now decide to leave.
Well, there are multiple ironies in this, but I think that's true. And so the question is, if the European Union aspires to a more active role, not only in the neighborhood, but globally, you see, it seems to me you have to be doing something, if not directly on the enlargement front, at least on the integration front. So that's extremely important. I also think, and I'll come back to this just at the very end, that it's extremely important from a transatlantic perspective as well. Because the United States, NATO, and that's not our agenda item, but NATO also is a stakeholder in what happens on this front. Absolutely. But what kind of EU is this going to be? And I know you began to speak about this earlier. You know, is it a looser, multi-speed sort of Europe in which this region can more easily fit? Is it a region of core, is it a Europe of core values, which has another kind of utility in terms of the trajectory of this region? Is it a strategic Europe that aspires to a much greater role, as I say? I mean, it seems to me on all of these fronts, the continuity of European engagement in the Western Balkans is absolutely critical. But let's be a little honest. If you sit in Brussels today and you look out across Europe at the nationalism, the nativism, the renationalization, all of these things, you know, you have to get a little bit disheartened about the public and even elite enthusiasm for future enlargement. Now, we're not talking about Turkey here, obviously. That's a different issue entirely, but in a sense it has challenged, it has poisoned, if you want to use that term, the whole debate about enlargement in the European Union in a way that probably isn't helpful for you here. So at the end of the day, yes, definitely enlargement as a project, but convergence as the vehicle, it seems to me, in the near term. The second point I'd make is that none of this, not the debate, not the reality of enlargement, is taking place in a kind of benign atmosphere. This is not a benign environment in the region. In economic terms, it's perhaps doing a bit better, but if you look at it in geopolitical and security terms, this is getting rougher. It seems to me it's getting rougher in terms of the security of states, but also the security of individuals. Regionally, the unresolved issues we've heard about, but also more broadly. I don't know how many of you might have seen or read Robert Kagan's new book about the return of the jungle. I think maybe he goes a step too far. But basically, his point, I think, is correct, that the return of great power competition in a system that used to be moderated, managed by the United States largely, is something that creates a very, very difficult, very challenging context for this. But again, I think makes this kind of integration much more important, because at the end of the day, that's one of the key hedges against things going badly wrong. And you know, the point here too is, you know, is the status quo acceptable? Is the status quo stable? The Prime Minister referred to this as well. I think I would agree with her. The status quo is not stable. The status quo is not necessarily acceptable. And therefore, from my point of view, unofficial point of view, it seems to me that the initiatives, whether it's on the Macedonia, our own name issue, or whether it's between Serbia and Kosovo, these are risks worth taking. There's a big debate about this, of course, but it seems to me that if it's embedded in a bigger process of integration, the risks are somewhat ameliorated. And I think that's a very important point as well. And then finally, let me just say a word about the transatlantic context for this, because I think it really matters, in fact. Will the U.S. remain focused on this region? Yes, I think the U.S. will remain focused on this region. I think the U.S. has been focused on this region. Are we the drivers of developments in this region in a way that arguably we were 10 or 20 years ago? No, we're not. And I think if you look across successive American administrations, it's not just this administration, but the Obama administration and before that the Bush administration, there was a desire, frankly, to see Europe take the lead in this region. And I think under this administration today, probably that's even reinforced. So I think while you'll see the United States be supportive of the enlargement as a prospect of integration, of convergence, we're not going to drive it. It's going to be the European Union. Allow me a final thought, because next month will be the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War. This is obviously, that was an event at the start of the First World War, and then shaped this region dramatically. But there's a lesson embedded in this, it seems to me, about risks and stability, which is that we cannot be complacent about stability, about the order. In 1914, the world went from, at least as far as great powers were concerned, not in this region, but went, as far as great powers were concerned, from predictable stability to complete chaos in a period of weeks. And I think that was at a time when we'd all agree things moved more slowly. So let me end with that.
Perfect.